Hey everyone, welcome back to another interesting video. Now, if you are a software developer, chances are that you must have already used Docker containers. Docker containers are a good, smart way to encapsulate your application in a single package, and you can just deploy your container onto any environment you want. And if you are already using Docker containers, chances are that you must be looking ahead to deploy these containers onto a cluster, because that's how you want to scale your containers, and that is how you are going to ensure high availability of your containers. In this short and simple video, I'm going to show you how you can deploy your containers onto a local cluster running on your PC or laptop. So you do not need to have a cloud service. You do not need to subscribe to any cloud service whatsoever. All you need to do is to have this software right here. Docker Desktop is a free software available for Windows, Linux, and Mac. It supports both Intel and Apple chip. It is silicon ready, so you won't have an issue with your M1 chipsets. Now, this Docker Desktop helps us in creating, managing our containers, managing our images, and creating volumes. You can also monitor your containers, you can check for logs and so on. But the most important thing is that you can create your own local Kubernetes cluster with the built-in functionality. All right, to reap the benefits of this video, I would suggest that you pause right here and install Docker Desktop and come back and resume. Follow along as we go ahead. So as you can see, I've got my Docker Desktop up and running right here. Let me just quickly open it up. And this is what the interface looks like. On the left side, there are different blades here. There are different sections. The first is the container or the apps. So right now I do not have any containers running. Let's check out the images. In the image section, you are seeing some local images which are there on my system. So you can create, you can pull any image and you can run it directly from here. You can inspect it, you can remove it, and also you can check for the remote repositories. I have right now not connected to any remote repository like Docker Hub or so. All right, let's check out the next section, which is the volumes. If you are familiar with containers, you know that you can map a volume from your host onto the container. An easy way to do is to just click on this create and give the name for your volume and go ahead and map it. So the next section we have here is called dev environments. This is a preview feature. With this feature, you can use your VS Code editor along with Docker Desktop and create images, share it across different environments. We are not going to look into this right now. Now let us just quickly enable Kubernetes cluster. To do that, you have to go to the settings from the top right menu and look out for Kubernetes, which is right here. As you can see, this is enabled. So you need to enable Kubernetes. Check this box here and enable Kubernetes. This would start your single node cluster on Docker Desktop. So now we have seen what the Docker Desktop looks like. The other thing which I would need is a editor, and to make things easier for me, I use VS Code. So this is the VS Code editor, and I would say that this is one of the best out in the market. It makes coding productive and it increases your productivity because it's got all these sorts of extensions which you may need, which makes things easier for you, which makes coding easier for you. So one important extension is the Kubernetes extension by Microsoft itself. And as you can see, I've already installed it. With the help of this extension, I can look into the cluster. I can connect to any cluster wherever it is, be it on a cloud, Azure, GCP, AWS, or it is running locally on Minikube, or maybe it's running on an OpenStack environment. The other important plugin is called YAML. This plugin with its built-in Kubernetes syntax feature makes coding easier, makes writing the manifest file easier for me. So you definitely need to have this one. All right, let's go ahead and create our first manifest file. We'll call it deployment.yaml. This is going to be our deployment file. Now, if you are familiar with Kubernetes and the manifest files in Kubernetes, there is a deployment. The deployment is the manifest file which is going to create your pods. With the help of my extension, I'll make things easier for me. I don't need to type the whole stuff. I just need to press Control and space. It gives me option to choose from, and I would select Kubernetes deployment because that's what I want. So here you see that I have got the manifest file with the kind deployment. And you see that they have given the my app as the name of the deployment. I'm going to change it. I'm going to quickly name it to hello. So I have named the deployment as hello. Now we'll look into one of the most important part, which is this one in the specs section, which is called containers. This defines the repository from where my image is going to be pulled from. So for this example, I'm going to pull the Hello World application from GCR, which is Google's container registry. I'll give the path right here and I'll save it. So my deployment is going to be pulled from the GCR repository. The next you see is resources. This would help us in limiting our memory and CPU and our compute capacity. This is definitely handy if you want to reduce wastage of compute. Right now I do not need this, so I'll just comment this out. The next section is the ports. Now this one I do not need at the moment. So I just need to make my Hello World app accessible from outside the cluster. So I have a way to do that, and that is through the environment variable. I just create an environment variable like so and give the key values. So let's give a name for the port and the value of the port. So what I have done right now is I have exposed my application, Hello World application, onto port 80 on my cluster. Now that I have got my deployment manifest file ready, the next thing is to deploy it onto the cluster. The way to do is through running kubectl command. Kubectl is a command line tool for Kubernetes. If you're not familiar with this, you can check out the kubectl cheat sheet right here on the Kubernetes website. So it has all the information which is needed in order for you to run the kubectl command. All right, we'll just quickly run kubectl apply -f because we are giving a particular file name. So we are right now running deployment.yaml. So just quickly go ahead and run this. There you go. We have created a deployment called hello. Now one way to verify if your deployment is created is again with the help of kubectl command. You can check the pods and we find that the pod is created for Hello World application. The other way is with the help of this VS Code extension. This right here is the Kubernetes extension. I'll click on the cluster. I see that there is a single node Docker desktop cluster. I open this up. We'll check the workloads. In the workloads, I find the deployment hello present here. And also the pod is present. That means that my application is installed or deployed onto the cluster. Now, the next thing I want to do is to make this application accessible from outside the cluster. In my case, I want to make it accessible from my Chrome browser right here. And in order to do that, we just need to select our deployment right here and right click look out for this option called port forward. So I'll just click on this. So this is asking me for a value for my local port, which would map onto the port 80 of the cluster. So in this case, the remote port is port 80, and the local port could be any port of my choice. I'll choose 10,001 and port 80 for the remote. Hit enter. So now my port forwarding is enabled. Any request hit on port 10,001 on the local host would be redirected or forwarded to port 80 on the cluster. That's simply what port forwarding is. It is forwarding requests from one port to the other. Let's quickly verify it. Let's go to our Chrome browser and see if we are able to access the local host application on my cluster. Bingo. So we are able to access our application on the cluster from outside the cluster from the browser. And that is it. That is how simple it is. So in this session, we have seen what is Docker Desktop, how we can use Docker Desktop to create a single node Kubernetes cluster. Also, we have seen how we can use VS Code editor and its plugin to help us observe the cluster. That is it. If you have liked this video, if you have found it helpful, make sure to share it. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe it. Yes, because I would be making more such videos, which would be really helpful if you are taking a step into cloud computing, if you are learning to optimize your application, containerize your application, or enhance your application. So stay tuned, and the way to do is by clicking on that bell notification icon. Just click there so you are notified about my latest videos. All right, thanks for watching.